Please welcome back Pascale Breton. So I'll start with a few questions for you before turning it over to the audience. It's a film that contains so much and that also is constantly moving in different directions. I'm wondering if you could maybe just say a bit about how you found the shape and the structure of the film. I would guess that the title is a bit of a clue, the idea of a suite, perhaps in a musical sense.
The title came at the end, actually. But the film came very quickly when I was writing. I wrote it quickly. It was sort of improvising writing. I didn't want, I'm a script writer. I always wanted to direct movies, but for a long time I've been a script writer, and I was thinking of how I would direct it. So to get rid of the habits of writing scripts, I decided for this film to improvise writing as in the way of Cesare Zavattini, who was the scriptwriter of in Italian, how is it? Le Nouveau Réalisme. Neorealism in Italy. And he said you should write a film like you discover a new country or a new city and you're walking through it, and you discover it through walkings. You discover, oh, there is this, I go back, there is that, you get lost, you discover. And if you don't know the ending of the story, it's the same. You have characters, you move forward with them, and you discover the whole country of your movie. Because it's sort of a Platonician way of thinking, that the idea, everything exists before you experience it. So that's the way I wrote, and I did this screen very quickly, in 2 months. It was finished, and it's the same. I changed very little. But then the process of it, because I was in an unknown country and both at the same time very close to myself, the process of shooting and editing was long.
Right. It's interesting you quote this Zavattini idea of exploring a new country, and then as you point out, this is obviously not in many ways a new terrain for you. Can you say a little bit about your background and your just obvious intimate familiarity with this world, which I think really comes across in the film?
Actually, I had just before I had this film I couldn't make because of my producer not finding the money to raising the money to do it, which is something happening. But it was actually it was 3 films. So, and at that point so the former one I wanted to do, which I couldn't manage to do, was about French Revolution and the ending of French Revolution. And I had to work a lot about it, how people could talk. I enjoy knowing a lot about the characters, how they were dressing, the words they were using, the feelings they had at the 18th century, which was, I suppose, very different than nowadays. So when I understood that this film, I was not going to do it, I wanted to write something like very quickly, like I know everything about what I'm writing about. That was part of the project, like the Cesare Zavattini. It was part of it. So I decided to settle a film inside this universe I knew very well of the university. Well, I thought I knew very well because I had been only spending 2 years of when I was studying geography at this university. So that was the place. And I wanted to know everything about the characters. Like Françoise is someone about my age, and she comes back to Brittany, which was something I had lived when I was in my late 30s. So it's not the same age, but still the experience, I knew it. I knew about psychoanalysis and living it. I knew about geography. I had been a geographer in Rennes. I knew about the grandparents talking in Breton, a language I couldn't speak because it was not transmitted. So all these things I knew about them. The landscapes of Rennes, the landscapes of Western Brittany where we shot the ending, all those landscapes, I knew them very well. I didn't know anything about being blind. This is something I had to know. So there are little parts of documentary you have to learn about, but very little.
So Ion's field of study comes from you, geography, and can you say a little bit about Françoise and art history and sort of what that means to you, and also obviously plays an important role in the film?
So art history is not something I studied or whatever. I mean, I don't come from I didn't know much about painting before I was like 25 years old when I went to Italy to meet friends, and then I couldn't leave Italy. I was traveling in Italy because I discovered what Renaissance had been. I come from Brittany. It's the western part of France, and it's a place with no visual tradition, really. Not so. I felt like a barbarian when I arrived in Italy. I changed my mind about that meanwhile, but I felt like I didn't know anything about all this civilization which had been so strong in at the end of medieval time or Renaissance whatsoever. It was so beautiful, and so for many years I went back to Italy just to learn more about painting, but it was like very it's not something I learned. It's something I really did as an experience. And I did even there at the time with friends who were from a bourgeois family, and they knew a lot about paintings and museums and all that. I didn't talk. It was something very secret inside of me that I loved. Painting, his history of art, but it has been very personal experience. So in this film, I thought of talking about that because when I decided to settle a story in university, I didn't want it to be too much in words. I wanted to privilege the experience, like seeing, hearing, cinema, like the experience of seeing and hearing. So very quickly, the idea of showing paintings came to me. That through a painting, she was sort of like a director, and she was showing, okay, this is the painting, as I could teach, okay, this is the way the shot is done. Out of what?
Did you spend much time in an academic environment? Her lectures are very convincing, and they're actually really, I thought they were great. I actually wanted more of them. I could have heard her, go on about the tea for much longer than you showed. So did that come from, was it all stuff you wrote? Did you adapt any existing lectures?
They were written. They were written, but when I wrote them like very quickly. And then I thought they are boring, the lectures in the beginning, and my producer said something very nice, because I said maybe we could cut off part of the lectures, because when we go to ask for money or whatsoever, they will say it will be a very boring film because of the lectures. And he said, no, I love the lectures, and please keep them, because generally when you write a script, you don't put all the lecture. You put a part of it, because then you follow the action during the lecture. But I decided for this script, I write the whole lectures, So we're not rewriting little bits of lectures as we generally do on the sets. And sometimes I've been, when I was a scriptwriter, okay, Pascale, can you come to add, these lines and etc. So I wrote the whole lectures, but then the lectures became so interesting because Valérie was so good, and the lectures which I had written as like automatic writing almost, people liked them. And when we were editing, we discovered that this is something we discovered through editing, that we had to follow the whole lecture. If we couldn't follow the lecture, the scene was not interesting. And we had to follow both the lecture and what the people were doing. And at that point, when I arrived to sound post-production, it became a problem because the people I worked with in sound production were saying, okay, you have to choose. Either you show the lecture, either you show what the characters are doing during the lecture, and we can't put the sounds at the same level. But I wanted to have the sound at the same level, not to choose. That the ear can do like the eyes, choose what they are following, which is not easy. If we go in very bad theater with the sound, it's difficult to follow actually. So you don't know what to follow. But so the lectures. Then it was Valérie Dréville. She's a very good actress, and for her, she said this is the easier part, to be a teacher. I think she's very good as a teacher. She's doing things like very precise. Then when I was in the university, I could go to follow everything because I had residence. As a filmmaker, I was invited in the university the whole year, following everything all along the year. And I had a group of students in cinema who were following what I was doing with the film and working on the film. And so I could go to see how the teachers were doing, and etc. So it was useful also to direct my actors and everything.
Okay, we'll take some audience questions. The question is about the character Moon. Specific question or just... Okay, just can you talk a little bit about Moon?
So about Moon, I wanted to talk about this movement of free parties. Is it something in America? I don't know. So it's a movement of music happening it started in Great Britain, in London actually. It was linked to techno music. And these people in England who very soon came to France and all Europe, but first they came to France and lots of them came to Brittany. They thought that a place where you play music, techno music, was a free space out of political control. So Moon was involved in this movement, which is maybe one of the ends of rock music, considered as a political movement, as something political. So she was involved in that, and at the end, all this movement was really fighting the police, and it stopped because of governments. They decided we don't want to have like free parties. So it went free parties. And Moon is talking about that when she meets Françoise. Françoise has been completely out of it. She was in Paris, she was teaching, she was having her boyfriend being a psychoanalyst. She was in a very classical, part of the society in Paris. But Moon was not. Moon went on the utopy, the utopia of her youth, and she in a way she lost with like this movement lost. That's it. So it's in their youth they were completely together and linked, but there was this time, these years, maybe during 20 or 30 years, they were not together anymore. So you can see one can see Moon like just being sort of homeless, being alcoholic or whatsoever. But one can see also something else, like a betrayed hope.
All right. Yes. Did you want the film to remain mysterious or enigmatic? Because there is a line about, I think, when she talks about her dream and.
The enigmatic dimension is from. You know, what I wanted to do was to, because the university is a place, a very rationalistic place. It's a place for la raison, the reason, you know. It's a place where you learn things and to approach things in a rational way, of course, and we all agree about it. So I wanted to put together rationalism and magic, that there are two different human ways of approaching things. So I needed for that to recall pre-Socratic philosophers like Heraclite, who is quoted from the beginning, like time, le temps est un gosse. Time is a kid playing marbles. So I wanted to go back to a sort of approach of the life which is just between magic and rationalism, not choosing, just staying in between. That at the end, when you see the grandfather, who is sort of a magician, you can think it's a human way of approaching things, of making life nicer, like art. You know, art is in between. It's between rationalism and enigma. It's in between. You cannot do art being only on the side of enigma, not being on the side of rationalism, and magic is about the same, I would say. So I didn't want the film to remain enigmatic, and I'm sorry if it remains enigmatic. It's not completely enigmatic. I didn't want it. But the enigma is there. The enigma of what? Sorry?
I don't think it's a bad thing.
No, enigma is there like life is an enigma. I mean, we can't solve it, neither through rationalism or reason, neither with magic. It will remain.
Question about, I'll just repeat, about these characters from Françoise's past, John, and question about the marginality of these characters. And
they don't have all of them. They are not all of them in marginality. For instance, the first one she meets, Françoise, is Stéphane, and Stéphane is the head of the library, of an important library in university, and he's a completely normal person, if normal means something. So the other ones, about John, I wouldn't talk neither about any marginality more than being a musician or an artist. He's someone like he's a musician, he's a rock musician, and he's doing good music, I hope. The music we put for him is good one. And then Catherine is mad, but maybe she's not mad all the time. She's mad because Françoise is there. She's mad from time to time, like people who are mad are. And Moon is homeless. But I mean, the people I knew when I was 20 years old, lots of them are really of this time of punk or post-punk time, when they are still alive. They are not in all of them in good health. But some of them are, and I wanted to show it also.
Question is about the cinematography. You can talk about your collaboration with your DP, and also, I guess, just the structure of proceeding through the seasons and the months.
With my DP, actually, I decide everything before, so I don't work much with my DP, which is a problem, actually. I don't work enough with my DP. I prepare everything and then we shoot. It's all because, and in this film especially, because I was staying there. The crew was going back everywhere, so I was doing my photographs and making my découpage in between, and then they came back and we did what I had planned. And I was working maybe more with my students. I had a group of 12 students who were following the shooting. So they were sort of all of them my assistants. We were going, okay, come with me. We go this and we make pictures there, or I want to see that, or we look for a location. We were working like in a very particular way, just wandering about in the university or in the city. And then about the seasons is something which was from the beginning. I wanted to shoot from the first day to the last days of a year in university, which is from September to April. And then the whole film is about how time flies. And so I needed to show the time every way possible, like for instance, you see there is a little clock on the neck of the secretary, and you see the seconds, or you see how you change a year between, in the street, and suddenly it's a new year. It's all for instance, the Susie and the Banshees music, when in the first flashback it's named Clock Face, the name, and it's all about time, all the time, in all the possible ways.
You talked about how there are only two sort of the conventional flashbacks, but the film does move back and forth in the sense of the scenes. I think it's mostly the scenes with Françoise and Ion come into proximity that play out again from opposite perspectives. Can you talk about that decision?
Yes, it's right what you see. That the time of the film moves every time they meet. This is how it moves. You go back, but I didn't want it like flashbacks. I wanted it like the story never stops, but you change the point of view, and you don't know at what time of the story you are. And but this is not flashbacks for me. It's a flashback when Françoise arrives at the point she meets Moon, and you go back in the 80s. Or when she remembers Moon. But it's never like a classical flashback, I think. It's always a different way to move toward. But something which happened with the movie was that at some points, exterior elements arrived, like, for instance, a rush, not rush. There is an archive we found for the credits in the beginning, which is characters entering the concert room in Rennes, which is a very famous place in Rennes, Salle de la Cité, which was very important for rock in this city. And this shot was so strong, made from a cameraman of the early 80s, that we decided to use it inside the movie also, like when Françoise is with John, as a memory. So it's sort of a flashback also, but not really. It's and when we arrived to the museum, we were so far in that vision of time that we thought, when we were editing, but it's something we didn't do, it was too late to tell the producers, okay, we're doing some retakes now. That we thought, Françoise, at this point, we go from a painting to another, and that if we, maybe the painter of the 17th century would appear, and Françoise would talk with him and saying, okay, we're in the 17th century now, it wouldn't have been such a problem. That we were traveling in time all along the film, and it was becoming something normal, like when we arrived to the grandfather at the ending, it could be also in like a few centuries ago, and it was like that.
We can take one final question if anybody has one. Otherwise, maybe I'll just ask you to tell us what you are planning to do next. I know it was quite a long interval between your first and second films, and hopefully it won't be.
Yes, I hope
long.
it won't be as long. I hope really. Yes, I'm writing 4 scripts at the same time. I mean, I'm always writing scripts, and I hope I can make them.
Well, we have to wrap it up, but I want to thank Pascale for coming to present the film, and thank you all for coming. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.